Excellent. Well, welcome to our webinar. Today, we've got a fantastic group of folks that are going to be presenting on developing a marketing plan and how to implement it. We've got Dr. Thilmany from Colorado State University. She is the CSU Regional Economic Development Institute professor. We've got Danielle Trotta, who is our Senior Marketing Specialist and our Colorado Proud Program Manager. We have Tera Keatts, who is a Strategic Director and Partner of Philosophy Communications. Just a couple thoughts. Mute your microphone when our folks are presenting. It just helps eliminate background noise. We really want questions and encourage them. Raise your hand or type it in the chat, and we'll be monitoring that, and we'll just make sure it's addressed. And we will ask for questions after each speaker, and then again at the end. And of course, if you think of a question afterwards, you can contact any of the speakers or send them to me. I'm Barb, and we can go ahead and get those to the speaker that you'd have a question about. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Thilmany and a little bit about Dawn. She is a professor of agricultural economics and the co-director of the Regional Economic Development Institute at Colorado State University. Her research and outreach focuses on food systems and rural economic development, primarily focused on opportunities related to value-added food market supply chains, market access, and financial viability of underserved food enterprises such as beginning farmers, food, consumer behavior, and economic diversification such as agritourism and entrepreneurship. She is also on the Colorado Food System Advisory Council and will help lead the new USDA Northwest and Rocky Mountain Food Business Center. Fantastic. Dawn, thank you so much for joining us, and I turn it over to you to share your expertise.
Hello. Well, thank you for that nice introduction. Hopefully everybody can see this well. And although Barb gave us a big challenge of trying to talk about how to develop a marketing plan, where those of us who work in this know that takes years and lots of refinement as you go, I took it as an opportunity to just hit some highlights of both what we always tell anyone starting any farm or food business to focus on, but also try to integrate some of what we are learning about market and market dynamics to make that helpful. So again, I'm Dawn Thilmany. I'm at Colorado State University in our extension programs, but some of these materials are part of what I've developed with teams across the years. So when I teach marketing to an undergraduate class on campus or one of my extension audiences, there's usually kind of 4 ways you can divide it: the 4 P's of marketing, or the 3 C's of market differentiation. So I decided to do a little bit of both today, just to get your creative juices thinking. But probably most commonly in marketing, we see people tend to focus on the 4 P's of marketing. That's product, place, which really is kind of your distribution strategy. Now, it's somewhat about the geography of your place and being proud of our Colorado programs, but also about where you're going to sell in Colorado. Promotion, or how you communicate about your product. Pricing, and increasingly we see people focusing on that 5th P of people. It turns out people are getting so much more diverse in what they look for in products that sometimes it's important to have a focus on that as well. So I want to start with product P, but really product P in the context of a farm that I think does an exceptional job hitting all of the P's, and that's Cure Organic Farms in Boulder County. I've gotten the opportunity to work with them almost my whole 25-year career here, but I think they do an exceptional job on all of their P's. For your product positioning P, you really want to think about what comes top of mind to people when they think about your product. And for some of you who might be doing a food product, that's easy to think about the flavor or the taste. But particularly with farms, ranches, or anybody who's going to do a diverse set of things, you want there to almost be this kind of like sense of what your farm's about. Well, I think Anne does a great job. She keeps it very, very heritage, with having beets top of mind in almost all of her programming. She uses in her social media pictures of her beautiful farm. but she also really makes it very family centric, kid centric. They have camps there. They have a farm store that's really kid friendly. And of course, because she takes advantage of Boulder open lands and location, I think really takes advantage of showcasing how well she's stewarding the land that community's put in her space. So although I bring this up as a product P, I really think she hits all of the P's. The place P has always been the hardest to help people get their heads around, but it's getting increasingly easier because now people really think about, where am I going to sell? It isn't just about what am I going to sell, but where am I going to sell? And usually we now see a variety of market channels all listed here that people choose to sell through. And there's great advantages to those direct to consumer markets because they're a little easier to get into. You get lots of direct interaction with your buyers, but we would say some of the downsides of that are that it takes a lot of labor and management energy, and it somewhat limits the amount of sales you can do. So generally when we see people want to grow and get bigger, they go into these intermediated markets where they try to start selling through stores, either directly or through distributors, wholesalers, and increasingly to institutions like schools or colleges. One interesting thing we found during COVID is that we had up to 33% of all consumers start trying a new market. And you can see I really focused here on those direct markets because those are perhaps the ones you all are looking at getting into. And so we saw that as a really great opportunity for there to be no new businesses develop because these markets did get a lot of new customers walking through them. And in fact, and this is the most numbers I show you, I'll promise, when we looked at where people were shopping, this might help you benchmark a bit how many people shop where. Really, those super centers and supermarkets are where the hyper majority of Americans still buy their food products. And so that is a goal to get into. But we look at, and we're really encouraged by, there's still 10, 15, 20% of people visiting some type of direct market. So particularly for people who don't have huge volume sale goals, it's more and more increasingly possible for you to be able to actually go into those markets and get pretty significant sales. And in fact, even though only 10% of people go to a farmer's market, when they go, they're spending $23, $25, $30 at a time. So that starts really adding up for being a pretty good market build that those people who need to focus on direct markets still can. But as you see again to the left, both the share of people going to supermarkets and the amount of money they spend there is significantly higher. So that's still where we see the majority of our food dollars flow. So you keep all of that in mind when you're looking at channels. But we also would say, as we move into pricing, that what you can price at is based on where what channels you choose as well. Usually when you're looking at going into those retail markets, you're going to have to be very competitive with your pricing. And so you might not actually even be able to always cover your costs depending on your production cost. But really, this is also how I'm going to transition us into thinking about the 3 C's as well. And we'll come back to pricing because our pricing so much depends on knowing your cost, knowing your competitors, and knowing your clientele. But for now, we also want to point out where you sell will affect what you can price. And finally, when we talk about promotional P, I want to tell people, and we're going to hear a great speaker on this, that sometimes you can do a lot of promotion without spending any dollars. And you can see when we ask consumers about where they were hearing about new markets, actually word of mouth and local interaction, like actually seeing the marketplace or the farm stand, is often the most common way people are finding markets, no matter what kind of market they use. So there's a lot of encouragement there for you too, to think about cost-effective ways you can do promotion, but you have to be very strategic with that as well. So then I'll quickly go over the 3 C's and turn it over to the rest of our speakers, but I'm going to come back to a couple of things we already hit on in our 4 P's, because I'm going to talk about your customers, your cost, and your competition. We also learned when we did this research during the COVID era that there was different drivers affecting people depending on where they shopped. I'm going to focus a little bit on these, again, direct markets, because they tend to be where a lot of people start, but not surprisingly, people going to those markets were looking for locally grown and organic more often, but they're also really looking for any evidence you're supporting the local economy. So whether it's you keeping a farm in business or you hiring this many workers, that's an important message to share with your people. Obviously, during that era, some of them were going to these new markets because they were outdoors and COVID was affecting their shopping. But we're seeing that kind of returned to normal more, but it was important to know at that time that it seems like when we have pandemics like that in the future, people will look for those smaller outdoor markets to shop in. But you'll also notice there's some of these places where they're also seeing these markets doing better at meeting their cultural preferences. So perhaps there's certain foods that they want, or that they attract vendors or recruit vendors that have a more diverse set of produce they're offering, value-added products they're offering. So these are all just ways to think about what is driving your customers to markets and how you can leverage that in how you position your product. We also like to think about customers in a couple ways. There's those loyal return customers that are the ones you really get as tried and true people who come back to your booth or your store or your farm market often. I kind of highlight them because they tend to be less worried about cost. They're way worried about relationships. And what I would tell you is even part of your promotional strategies, nurture those relationships and use those loyal folks as the folks who also get that word of mouth out. Give them ways to get your word of mouth out. Perhaps give them coupons to hand out to their friends. On the flip side of that, we have the price and value oriented folks who are very price sensitive. It doesn't mean you don't try to get their business, but they're the ones who will come up and sometimes challenge your prices, tell you should be charging less. And we're giving you permission to pretty much ignore them because you don't have to make every customer happy. If you keep those loyal customers happy and they give good word of mouth, you can usually keep your prices from feeling like you can't charge what you need to charge to run your business. But another thing we think about when you think about pricing is knowing what your competitors are selling. So we do, and we have collected at CSU farmers market price reports for a wide swath of Colorado markets, and even paying attention to some places where they have various certifications, but most commonly organic. And just want to show you that we do have those available, and you can Google search for them, or I put a link here quickly, but it kind of shows you, we can show by market what is the most common price point being charged for things. And that may help you set your prices as well, or you can go visit those markets directly yourself and see. And then another resource that we now offer is for those of you who are trying to sell meat products, but it's really hard because there's so many parts to a carcass, particularly if you're thinking of beef. We now have a calculator that you can use to help you figure out your prices, because you might be wanting to get the prices per cut of meat down to the right point. So I covered a little bit of time, but I'm happy to answer questions. And I think this will actually just set the stage for the two next speakers who are going to go a little deeper into the topics. They have far more expertise than I am. But thank you for your time.
That was great, Dawn. Thank you. A lot of information. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to put it in the chat or raise your hand and ask her directly.
Or if there's any resource I mentioned that you want me to put a link in while I'm listening to the other two speakers, I can easily do that as well.
I think that would be great. Well, Dawn, I had a quick question. Going back to when you talk about promotion, what is a general rule of thumb when you put a promotion out there, whatever it is, a coupon or any kind of maybe a holiday savings? How long should you let that run before you change it? Obviously, with the holiday, it might end at the holiday, but what about other types of promotions?
It's so dependent on the product, really. So if you're looking at something that's in the fresh produce season where literally what you have changes every week, you want to make it weekly. Whereas if it's a consumer product good, a CPG, usually you do make those seasonal, and they could go as long as a month, or quite honestly, even a quarter. But I think what I'd also say, and Tara will probably follow up on this, is you want to find some way, if you're going to put a promotion out there, to have a metric you can track with that. So coupons are easy because they get turned in, but also, unless it really goes against your business philosophy and plan, having a social media campaign where you say, if you mention something, we'll give you a discount, or we'll have free market bags and you get a free market bag to shop with. But also be thinking of always things with two purposes, because the purpose of that one tells you if your social media was actually effective in getting people to your booth, but also when they carry around your bag that has your logo on it, they become an influencer for you because they're carrying around your bag. Like Elevation Beef up here has these great cooler bags, and we're probably the best promotion because we use them for where we shop at all of our stores. So we constantly are carrying around Elevation Beef, and so people ask us sometimes, "Who is that?" And so always think about how you can use your promotions to serve two purposes as well. And again, we have our promotional expert coming up, so she'll probably both say what I said right and what she could tell more about, and perhaps I said something wrong, but that's at least how. And word of mouth isn't meant to take away from people who can help you with public relations and media. We just think people really, really, really underthink how they can use their best customers who love them to get word of mouth on their behalf and empower them and give them swag to do that on their behalf.
No, that's great. Stacy has asked if you can put the Cornell Meat Calculator link. We'll get that done, Stacy. Thank you for asking. And Carolyn is asking, I'm creating an online grocery for pantry items. How can I best support food artisans, CPG, with marketing? Great question.
That is a great question. So the three places you want to go are, first, Danielle has a Colorado Farm Fresh directory and online search tool to look for Colorado products. So that's the easiest way to find them. Second, I would say go around your most low, what would be easiest for you to distribute from? So those farmer markets and artisan craft fairs, and talk to those folks and talk about if they do any type of bulk discounts, and like if you buy by case, if they would give you a discount because they're looking for a way to move more volume. And then third, I would say, is we actually have a pretty good network of co-packers and shared kitchens in the state. So again, approach some of those folks, because those tend to be the folks who are just now growing into a wholesale space. So they're looking for a way to get their volume up beyond what a farmer's market and craft fair allows them to. And again, particularly when they're thinking of planning about how they're going to batch out things, like you might even want certain sizes or containers, they might be the most flexible to work with you because they're actually doing at that shared commercial kitchen their batch runs. So those are the three places I'd identify them. And again, because they're looking to finally go to the wholesale level, they'll probably work with you, but realize the hardest thing to navigate with those folks is they're used to full value farmers market prices for their goods. And you have to convince them how much time and labor and energy you're going to save them from standing at a booth by being their wholesale client, to have them understand why you might get 25 or 30, pay 25 or 30% less, because they're going to have less cost selling through you. That's a challenging thing to do, but just know your numbers and try to help them know their numbers, and you can negotiate that. But yeah, and thanks for doing that, Danielle. But good luck with that, and that's a great idea, because I think there are people who have now gone to an online buying notion, but it's a little harder to find our stuff on Amazon than Frito-Lay's or whatever. So it's a great goal to go after, and then give them a way to promote you. So when they're not at farmers markets every week, people know where to buy their stuff. They'll love that.
Great question, Carolyn. Thank you. Wonderful. Well, if there's no other questions, and again, we come back around at the end, we'll move on to Tera. Tera is the strategic director and partner for Philosophy Communications. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree from the School of Journalism and Mass Communication, and a Bachelor of Science degree from the Leeds School of Business at the University of Colorado Boulder. Tera has spent more than a decade with Philosophy Communication creating and implementing strategic marketing, branding, and awareness campaigns that create consumer engagement, drive sales, and leave positive, lasting impact on the community. Some notable clients that she's worked with include Pueblo Food Project, the Colorado Department of Agriculture and Colorado Proud, History Colorado, El Pueblo History Museum, the Center for Colorado Women's History, Natural Grocers, and TGI Fridays. She's worked on and strategically grown accounts across many industries, including food, agriculture, government, education, energy, for example, solar and renewable energy, retail, technology, construction, and nonprofit. Geez, Tera, thanks for joining us. I'll turn it over to you, and you can share your expertise with us.
All right. Well, thank you, Barb and Dawn. I think what I am going to cover today builds really nicely on and all of the great information that Dawn just shared with all of you. So First and foremost, just a quick overview of what I'm going to quickly talk on today. First, we're going to start talking about branding and messaging and why that's important to your brand and your business, both as you're getting started here and in the long term. We're going to talk a little bit about creating a marketing plan, putting some of those 4 Ps that Dawn was talking about into practice. And what does that look like? Where can those be implemented? And then the different types of marketing channels that there are out there today. This has become a very, very, very large, crowded space with lots of different marketing channels, different avenues for you to reach people with the rise of online, social media, things like that. So we have started to comb this down on where to start. And then as Dawn was saying, measuring success. I cannot stress that enough. It is so important to have those goals and those metrics in place, and to constantly be going back and checking against them, both short and long term. But if we're not measuring it and we're not tracking it, then it's incredibly difficult to know what's working and not working, know where to continue spending your energy, continue investing your budget down the road. And as your business is wanting to grow and either expand into new distribution channels, expand into new offerings or products or stores or things of that nature, right? Having those success metrics and those tangible results available to share with those potential partners you're trying to reach is really, really critical. So as Barb sort of said, just a quick recap of some of the organizations that my firm has worked with, everything from large government or nonprofit associations like Colorado Proud and Danielle and CFVGA, small brands, small consumer packaged goods that have started out selling at farmers markets, many of which are still at farmers markets, but have had various goals in expanding into retail or other distribution channels. We've worked with retailers such as natural grocers and obviously restaurants, coffee shops, things like that. So we are no stranger to this the food space, large and small. So let's dive in first and let's talk about what is branding. All right, so what do you think when you see this picture and you see this sign? You think that this probably looks like pretty reputable fresh eggs, right? You've got the barn in the background, the handwritten sign. Perhaps these eggs were laid or collected this morning. You're probably not worried about all of the things that folks take into consideration when they're buying in a large grocery retailer, right? You're thinking that these are fresh eggs. This is legit. Right? What do you think when you see this picture? Are you going to trust to take your $1,000 plus computer to this repair person? Probably not. Could be the best repair person in the country. Bill Gates could trust this person with his life, right? But that is not lined up. This person's brand as a computer repair expert is not lining up with his visual image. And so that is the importance of branding at the most core level, right? Your brand identity is going to set the tone for who you are and what you are offering. And so you want to make sure that whatever your product is, whatever your specialty is, that you are taking into account the packaging that you're developing for it, the logo that you're developing for it, your website, the image that you want to convey when you're at a farmer's market or you are talking to a distributor to try and get your product into a retailer. You want to make sure that you've got that tone and you've got that brand image that's matching up with the product that you're selling and with who you are and what's authentic to your organization. Both visual, written, and verbal identity is important with branding, right? So it's not just your packaging, it's not just your logo, but it's your elevator pitch. It's the words that you're putting out there in your materials. It's how you're communicating to your potential customers or your potential partners via email. It's how you're showing up if you're a vendor at a farmer's market. So taking into that entire ethos of branding just beyond the product itself. And this helps you build that brand recognition. Packaging and that visual and verbal identity should be consistent, and it should be, to you, it's going to feel like a broken record. It's going to be very repetitive, but it is not something that you want to deviate from. It's not, you don't want to be trying out new messaging, new elevator pitch, sharing new information every time you talk to a customer. You want to be saying the same thing over and over and over again, so that you're building that brand recognition. And that is then creating the consistency, so that when other folks, and we're gonna talk about the different types of marketing channels in a minute, but when you start bringing in other people to carry your message, whether that's, as Dawn was saying a little bit ago, you're carrying a tote bag from somebody's ranch, or you're turning around and sharing about a product or company that you really like on social media. When you have folks starting to carry that message for you, that consistency and that brand recognition is going to become really, really, really important. And then as part of your brand identity, right, you're telling people what to think about you. People don't necessarily know. You can't expect anyone to know anything about your product, even if they have shopped at that same farmer's market week in and week out, and you've seen them pass by your booth before, but you don't know what they know or don't know until they walk up to your booth. And so you need to be telling them what you want them to think. You need to be telling them what you want them to know about your product, or the ingredients that you're using in your product, or the story behind it and why it is unique and special, and it is different from the other products that they can buy either at that market or in that grocery store, right? You need to be telling people what to think. There's just too much going on, and there's too much chatter in the world today that people don't know. They don't know what to listen to otherwise. So you want them to hear it from you directly. And then getting more specifically into that messaging itself, it's like we were talking about. How do you speak about your business? What is the story that you tell? What are the key words that you use? What are the buzzwords that are specific to your brand or your product? Make sure that you're fleshing all of that out. What is making your business unique? This is really, really important. As I just said, people are so inundated with messaging and product, and the average attention span is like less than 6 seconds these days. So you have to think about what is making your business different and what is making your business unique and stand out. So how are you different from the other products that are on that shelf, or from the other vendors that are at that marketplace? What is that unique selling proposition? What is that factor that makes, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a specific ingredient necessarily, right? But it has to be part of your story. It has to be woven into why did you found your business? And again, like I said, why am I picking your product over this one that's just down the way? Thinking about your key messages, again, going back to what we talked about just a few minutes ago, of having your consistent story, having your consistent brand message, how you want your key phrases and buzzwords to be integrated into the fabric of your brand. Working on your elevator speech. This is, if you do nothing else with your key messaging and your branding, have your elevator speech. Again, you're going to feel like a broken record. You're going to think you're saying the same thing over and over and over again, and you are, and that's okay. That's what you want it to be, right? But you want that elevator speech to be heard far and wide. You want everyone who walks away from speaking with you or visiting your website to know what that high-level spiel about your brand is, right? as you work on your messaging, you start to hone in on your audience. As Dawn was talking about, that 5th P, people. This is becoming more and more critical as we have a more diverse society, as we have new people moving to Colorado every day. That audience is constantly growing and constantly evolving. And you need to stay on top of who that audience is and who is your customer, and think about there are new people coming in on a very regular and consistent basis. And so you can never think that you have saturated the marketplace. You can never think that you have touched every possible customer that you are intending to touch with your product or your brand. It's really important to keep your finger on that pulse. And then once you have all of that, right? Once you have that branding and messaging, now you can dive into the sales and marketing. Now you can apply all of that hard work that you've developed there into the marketing plan, into your promotional techniques. And like I said a few minutes ago, start to track what are the sales, what are the results, what are the metrics that you're evaluating your performance on. And really when it comes down to branding and messaging, again, talking about, you need to tell people what to think. You need to have your elevator pitch solid. You need to have consistent messaging. You don't want 5 different people saying 5 different things about your company or your organization, right? This could be any number of different products if everyone is saying something different, but we want everyone to be saying the same thing. We are better because, or this product is better because, I choose this brand because. We want that consistent message, going back to your elevator pitch. We want this consistent message to be out there, and we want all those folks that you're potentially interacting with to be saying the same thing. All right, so getting into actually developing a marketing plan. So first, there are so many different things to take into account, so many different ways to go about actually constructing the plan and how it might look, right? But at its core, we come back to these 6 things. We've talked about this already, and Dawn has mentioned this, of what are your objectives from your marketing? Are you looking for brand awareness? Are you looking for conversions? Are you looking for sales? Make sure you have that set of what you're trying to accomplish with your marketing. What is your budget? This is really important to set so that you don't waste your time looking at marketing opportunities or looking at marketing tactics that aren't going to fit within your budget. So I think being really honest with yourself, and there are some great affordable marketing opportunities out there, and we're going to talk about those in a few minutes, but being really honest with yourself on what can you afford, or what does your budget look like. Where is your target audience? So again, are they shopping in stores? Looking back at that chart that Dawn had of where are folks shopping these days? In stores, farmers markets, online. Is your target audience statewide? Is it local? Is it Northern Colorado? Is it the town of Fort Collins? Getting honed in on where is that target audience that you want to try and reach. And what is the duration that you want your marketing campaign to be? As Barb asked the question, is it something that is for a specific period of time, like a holiday or a seasonal campaign? Is it ongoing? Is it year over year? Think about what you're wanting to get out of that length of time. Or if there's something specific that you want to be promoting, then what does that time period look like? Where are your competitors marketing? You don't want to miss out on those opportunities, but you also want to be seeking out new ones. So looking at where your competitors are at, making sure that you have a seat at the table in where your competitors are selling their product, but also then seeking out new places where your competitors aren't selling. Is that opportunity that can present itself from doing that? And then, as I have said, and as Dawn has said, how are you going to measure your success? Going back to what those objectives are, what are the metrics that you're going to be looking at throughout your campaign or at the end of it, whatever that time frame might be, that you're going to sit there and say, yeah, that moved the needle, or that helped my business, or nope, that didn't work. So think about those up front. And so when we start looking at all of the different types of marketing that are out there these days, we bucket things into 3 categories. They're owned, earned, and paid. And you need to have some combination of all 3 of these to successfully reach that target audience. And when you are focusing a little bit on all 3 of these, right, this is where you get into that sweet spot here in the middle, where there's that overlap of messages. There's you're making sure that you're covering everything from the large messaging, the large brand awareness building, down to something very tactical, like the distribution of coupons, for example, that you can track a redemption code at a more granular level. So getting into these 3 types of marketing channels, and what do each of these entail, and why they're all 3 important for your plan here, right? So owned media is marketing that you 100% create and put out, and you own that distribution channel, hence why it's called owned media, right? You are completely in control of that message. So that's things like your own website, your blog, any type of email marketing or newsletter that you're putting out, the organic social media content that you're putting out on your pages, or if you're attending an event, or you have a boutique or a booth at a farmer's market, right? You're controlling the message and the brand and the visual identity that you have in your own booth. So owned media is you are 100% in control of that message. And this allows you to be very specific about your product, to be able to tell your story, and make sure that brand image that brand identity that we talked about a few minutes ago is coming through exactly as you want it to. Equally, though, important, then we get into earned media. So earned media is what we like to look at as third-party endorsements. This is content that other people are publishing or sharing or writing about your company or your product, and you're not buying it. So you're not buying that review. You're not controlling the content that those people are putting out about your organization, but you have earned their endorsement, or you've earned their decision to write about or publish about or cover your product. Earned media can be both positive and negative, right? So that's something to keep in mind, that when you are seeking out those third-party endorsements and you're giving them a product to try, or you're inviting them in to experience your product or your store or whatever it is that you're selling, you're opening up that they're going to formulate their own opinion about the product, or they're going to write their own review. You're not getting to control or dictate what that is going to say. But earned media is incredibly, incredibly powerful, because it is that third-party testimonial, because it is that person's own unbiased, unsolicited, non-paid review of your product. So things like an article or news story that you didn't pay for the placement of, reviews or testimonials, social media shares or mentions. If somebody tags you in a post when they stopped by your booth at a farmer's market, or they try your product and they're posting about it, those are earned media comments. Organic Google search rankings. This is basically earned media from Google. Google has algorithms in place that read and what we call crawl every word, every piece of content on an organization's website. Anything that is out there in the World Wide Web, Google has algorithms out there that are crawling that. And those algorithms are reading and interpreting all of the information that you have on your website, all of the information that you have on social media, all of the third-party pieces that anyone has ever written about your organization, and Google is ranking all of that. And so when you Google something, farmers market near me, you Google local honey distributor, Google is returning what shows up in that search based on what it is crawling or what it is reading about that organization on the website, and it's ranking all of that, right? So the more content you have out there on your website, the better of a website you have, the more active presence you have on social media. All of that is playing into how Google is evaluating and viewing your business, and thus returning it when somebody searches. And then paid media, just as it says, this is any marketing that you're paying for. So advertising most commonly falls into this category. And it's something that you're paying to have your message, or you're paying to have your product or your brand featured on someone else's channel or someone else's platform. So any type of advertising, TV, radio, print, newspaper, billboard advertising, you're paying for that. If you're doing any type of digital or video advertising online, if you're doing a paid or sponsored social post, we've all seen that little that little sponsored mention in the corner of a social post. People are paying to have that content show up there. Any type of paid pay-per-click, paid search advertising, or if you're paying for content or you're paying for articles, this has become a very gray area where you will see that traditional news outlets like a 5280 magazine, or even some of the TV and radio spots these days make it look like it's earned media, make it look like it's editorial content, but you are in fact paying for it. So there's great value to paid media. Again, having a mix of all three of these, owned, earned, and paid, is really important. And paid media lets you get that message out there farther than your own channels, but also in a controlled manner, right? Because you're paying for the placement, you get to control what the ad says, you get to control what that content is. You get to write it or provide the talking points for it or provide the artwork for it. So you're getting to control it more so than you would with the earned, if that makes sense. So all of this mixing together goes into a marketing plan. You can't only focus on one and not the other. And there are ways to do all three of these affordably, effectively, without necessarily having to pay for TV advertising, right? So then looking at within those owned, earned, and paid, there are a lot of different factors to consider. There are a lot of different marketing tactics to look at. When we like to talk and again, this is me taking all of the different marketing tools and tactics available out there and distilling down to where could you start? Where are good places to invest your time, invest your energy and your resources to get started with a marketing plan? So looking at traditional marketing, we look at things like events, hugely successful, as we've all, I'm sure, experienced. Printed marketing materials, flyers, mailers, postcards, things of that nature. That you're able to print and distribute out. Advertising, we have talked about. Billboards, we have talked a little bit about. These are sort of the traditional basics of marketing, and common things that you would see. Traditional marketing is great for general awareness. It can be expanded far and wide. It's great for getting your name out there, getting your brand out there, starting to build that brand recognition like we talked about. Traditional marketing can sometimes be cost prohibitive as we get into advertising. Printed materials, just the sheer cost of printing these days. Some events can be more expensive to exhibit at. So traditional marketing is great for that bigger part of the funnel, that bigger brand awareness that you need to be creating. And it just depends where you're located, what you're looking to do as to where that falls in the cost standpoint. Digital marketing is absolutely something we all need to be taking into account. Again, we just talked a few minutes ago about the importance of having a good website for Google search purposes, but having a well put together website that is findable for people, is easy for folks to navigate, that is educational. It tells your story. It has your products listed on there. It doesn't have to be an e-commerce website, but as we talked a few minutes ago, as Dawn was saying, trying to get people to make the shift and find you online, and shop online if you're not on a large retailer like Amazon, which most of us are not. You have to make that website user-friendly. You have to make it attractive and appealing to people. And if you're not going to make an e-commerce website, which is completely okay, you have to then be able to tell people pretty quickly where they can find your product. If it's not on that website right there, where are you selling it? Either where can they locally go? What other online retailers have you partnered up with? Digital newsletters, email marketing is a huge opportunity. I cannot stress this enough. This is incredibly affordable as well. Build your network of potential contacts from your customers. Collect email addresses, collect phone numbers. Have forms on your website that folks can fill out so that you're getting that data and information so that you can start marketing to them. This is an incredibly affordable way to start reaching your customers and educating them on a more ongoing, consistent basis. As we talked about the value of Google, the power of Google with SEO and search, this is just unavoidable in the nature of today's digital age. And having that website, being active on social media, can certainly come back and help all of that. There are also paid Google search opportunities. There are ways, again, to pay to be at the top of the first page on Google when you're marketing. And then digital and video ads, again, these are the awareness building, taking some of the traditional marketing, taking some of the things from the traditional marketing playbook and starting to apply it in the digital online space. So digital is a great marketing tool from an education standpoint. Like I said, you can tell your story in a lot more ways online than you can in traditional marketing. This is also a great supporting tool as you're helping build your brand, right? I'm sure we all, you see a new product, you meet someone for the first time, you hear about a new business or you hear about something, right? What is the first thing we usually do? We go home and we Google it. So use this to your advantage as people are doing their homework, as people are researching what products they might be interested in, or why they're doing their research to pick one over the other. This is an opportunity to have that message out there to support it. And it reinforces your message. So again, like I said, people go home and Google things that they have seen as they're walking around, or things that they saw when they were shopping. So you want whatever they saw at the farmer's market, whatever they saw at the grocery store about your brand, whatever they saw in the one jar or one package that they bought of yours, when they go home to look online, we want your online visual identity to match what they saw at the market or what they saw in the store, right? And then social media is an incredibly impactful and an affordable marketing tactic to employ. There are what we call paid and organic social media. Paid social media, like I said, is when you see a sponsored post or a branded ad on social media. And then organic social is what you're putting out on your page or on your post yourself. You're creating that post and you're putting it out on your profile. In the food and ag space, we have found amazing success with Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Pinterest. And I'm not saying you need to go get on all 5 of those today and start being active on all of those today. You need to be realistic about what you can take on. But all of these platforms have one thing in common. They are incredibly visual. They are all also consumer facing. Whereas Twitter and LinkedIn are very different and have different audiences and different setups. All of these allow you to be very heavily focused on pictures, using video type of content, using graphics, anything that is visual to your brand. Facebook and Instagram are still hugely popular, and are very, very trusted as a potential buying platform for people when they're researching. TikTok and YouTube obviously are places for video content. TikTok is very trend based, so I would not recommend exploring that unless you have the time to be up on those trends, spending a lot of time watching videos on TikTok so that you can emulate those in a real time and timely fashion. But then YouTube and Pinterest have actually become, they're actually considered search engines now. So YouTube is owned by Google. It is the #2 searched website after Google. Pinterest, the way its algorithms work, it feeds into that Google SEO algorithm. So YouTube and Pinterest can be hugely beneficial to brands, especially food-based brands or food-based products, where you have visual images of your product or visual recipe ideas of your ingredients being used in a product or in a recipe in a certain way. So there's great value in that. Like I said, social media can be incredibly affordable, that visual storytelling, and then you can engage with your current or like-minded audience through those platforms pretty effectively. And then last but not least, as you've all heard me say, is we have to measure the success. So going back to when you're setting your marketing plan in the very beginning, did you achieve whatever those goals and objectives that you set out to be? Did you see an ROI that you were looking for? Did you gain new customers, new partners, new vendors or distributors, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve there? And then measuring that success and adjusting your plan and repeating it. So I think, Barb, as you asked about how long should we wait and see for something to work, and Dawn very appropriately said that depends on the product, that depends on what you're trying to achieve with it. But I think what's important here is that you're measuring it, you're adjusting it, and then you're sticking with it. Most times marketing is not a one and done effort. And it's not something that you can necessarily always definitely say this worked or did not work just based on one trial or one campaign, if that makes sense. So with that, if there are any questions related to that.
That was fantastic, Tara. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? I have a question. What advice would you give all of our Colorado Proud members in terms of how to really be specific about your differentiation, right? You hit on a really interesting topic about your competition, and you have to differentiate yourself, right? You said you have to tell your story and show them what is your story and why are you different? So how do you do that? What would your advice be to really be specific?
I think to figure out how you are different, or what your unique differentiator is going to be, is really go through trying to make this simple. But I think going through every aspect of your product or every aspect of your business and your brand and benchmarking it against other brands in your category, other businesses at the farmers market that you're selling at, and other competitors that you might know about, right? And starting to make some type of matrix or checklist of where are you different. And keeping in mind that your unique selling proposition or your competitor may not be another consumer packaged good necessarily. It might be the other vendors at the farmers markets, or those that you're looking in to get into a distribution network with, right? Those types of organizations only can have a certain number of vendors. They only have space for so many vendors. So how are you getting your foot in the door in those instances when it's a limited number? But I think going back to creating that matrix of starting to benchmark, how are you similar and how are you different to each of those organizations or each of those brands that you might be trying to measure up against, and then honing in on where are you standing out. That could be your length of time in business. That could be you're using a certain local ingredient, or you're roasting your ingredients in a certain way, or you're preparing the method in which you're preparing those ingredients into your food business. What problem do your consumers, do your shoppers, your audience have that you're able to solve? Is it convenience with online? Is it local shipping? Any of those sore spots of challenges that they have that you're solving.
That's great advice. Carolyn has asked, are podcasts a relevant production? Carolyn, is that kind of where you're going? Is that something that you could use?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just wondering, I was thinking of a podcast. I've been wanting to do one, but maybe a sort of a video podcast, because I believe my sort of differentiator is the storytelling of these local food artisans, and not so much, corporate food is bad, but here are all the reasons local food is good. I mean, down to the economics, to the locally sourced aspect. So I was just like, looking at my target audience, podcasts, at least one segment of it, podcasts weren't great. I was just wondering if maybe it's a poorly worded question, where are podcasts going out of fashion, or am I reading it wrong? That's all.
No, there's a lot of talk about podcasts these days. So it's a really great question. You hosting a podcast to share about each of your artisan brands or your partners is a great opportunity. I think podcasts can be as economical or as elaborate as you want them to make them, in terms of the production of them. How you distribute those podcasts, or you get the word out for those podcasts, is where the make or break is. So I think there's huge value in them. I know that they are still, very well respected and listened to. Lots of people still gravitate towards podcasts. So I think being really thoughtful, Carolyn, of when you're producing them, then how are you promoting to get them out, get that message out? Yes, Kelly.
I have a suggestion for Carolyn. I run around in the weird food world, and not weird foods, but the weird world of foods. One of the things I've noticed is that there are several podcasts out there that already exist around foods, especially local artisans or very specific targeted types of food production. So I would recommend that maybe you try to get on one of those shows as a guest podcaster, and then people can oh, I really like what Carolyn has to say, and then start following you from that podcast, because then you're using their advertising and their messaging to get you launched. One that I think might fit you is she's called Toasted Sister, and she's out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. She's always talking about different food processes, indigenous, native, regenerative ag, traditional farming methods, all that stuff. So she might be somebody you could reach out to.
That's a great suggestion. Just one last thought. When you were going through traditional versus digital versus social media, and I would imagine it depends on what you're selling, but in today's environment where we live on computers, phones, some form of an electronic device, what is your advice is the best form of that marketing to reach your crowd? I mean, yes, it's going to depend on what you're selling, but what are your thoughts there?
Oh, it is not a one size fits all.
Mhm.
I think you have to focus on your website though. I think you have to have, good information on your website. Your website, like we talked about, has to match with your brand. And then I think it does really depend from there, who your audience is and what it is that you're selling.
Excellent. Well, great job, Tara. Thank you so much. Well, let's shift a little bit and talk with Danielle. Danielle is our senior marketing specialist and our Colorado Proud program manager here at the Colorado Department of Agriculture. Most of you would know our Colorado Proud program is a free marketing program for agricultural, food, and beverage products that are grown, raised, or made here in Colorado. Danielle has been in the department for 5 years, and she continues to help grow the Colorado Proud program. And Danielle, thank you so much for joining us. I turn it over to you.
Thank you guys. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see that? Great. Okay, so I'm taking a little bit of a different angle here. I really wanted to kind of talk about how we at the state, specifically the Department of Agriculture, can really help be a good partner for your marketing plan and information, partnerships and other things that we do that sometimes people don't know that we offer, but definitely help grow your business. And so we'll just go over a few slides here, and then I'll open it up for questions. And if you guys have any, we can kind of walk through that. So yes, I'm Danielle Trotta. I manage the Colorado Proud program. So as a Colorado Proud member, there are many benefits. We work with a ton of other organizations in the state. So Colorado State University, Colorado State Extension, Colorado Fruit and Vegetable Growers. We do a lot of events at farmers markets, or we also have an international and national team that will bring folks to different food shows, making those new connections. So as a member, we think it's really important as part of your marketing to make new connections. There's always, things that maybe you didn't realize, like working with the Department of Education and their nutrition unit and how that connects you to schools or other government institutions where they're wanting to have folks, sell local food or provide local food that they can use in the meals that they make, or snacks for children. So making those new connections is something that we can help with. That kind of goes along with considering new market pathways. We've had a food pantry assistance grant that helps producers get into those different food pantries, or they have the funds to be able to buy local product. We also have a lot of dollars being funneled into the Department of Agriculture to really help focus on those local food systems. And so being a Colorado Proud member, that helps you almost be the first people to find out that information so that you can be involved or potentially apply. That also goes into our grant opportunities. With a lot of this new funding, we'll have lots of different grant opportunities. We have some right now. In the past, we've done marketing and technical assistance grants, which has helped companies buy new machinery to help maybe encapsulate dried mushrooms, which was one of our grantees. We've also helped with more environmentally friendly packaging and labeling for a company, even updating websites, helping with social media plans. So I think that's another great aspect of being a member and working with the state Department of Agriculture, so that we can help you find those opportunities to help you with your marketing plan and growing. We do a lot of market research. Actually, one of the things I'll be mentioning, and then I'll put the link in the chat so you guys can look at, for instance, our 2022 public attitude survey. We also do other market research from some of our work with philosophy. We just really want to have a good pulse on what's going on and how people are buying their food. I think this is helpful for companies because you can use that information to maybe develop, tweak, make a better marketing plan, and talking and connecting with consumers and other market pathways. We do a lot of advertising and education on your behalf. So we put dollars into farmers markets. We also do we've done advertising on Instacart. We do advertising in major retail stores. We do billboards. We're always directing people to coloradoproud.com to help them find local products. And then, of course, we like to do a survey every year to be able to find out what you guys need. So from a lot of the information that our members give back, we develop opportunities, learning like our webinars, having some in-person events so that you can continue to grow in ways to help with marketing and other technical assistance. So some of the ways to find out the best information that we have to offer and opportunities is being signed up for the Colorado Proud newsletter. So normally when someone becomes a member, we automatically add them to the newsletter list. You can also sign up if you're not a member or not ready to join yet. This has information about funding, loan opportunities, any events that we'll be at, what we're doing to advertise to get consumers to shop locally. I also have on here the Cultivation Station podcast, which we have a lot of great marketing information there with lots of great connections for people who can help you or guide you in the right direction to continue to grow your company and your marketing plan. These business development webinars are great. They're free. We have a lot of free resources for our members to be able to learn how to do new things to get new customers. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we have lots of awesome grant opportunities. We really like to work with farmers markets to help bring new customers there. Like I said, there will be lots of funding coming in for local food systems, which will be another great opportunity for you to grow. And being a part of the newsletter, being up to date on what we're doing, following our social media, these are ways you can connect so that we can help you. And like Dawn mentioned earlier, I really wanted to kind of point out some of the things that we found interesting, at least in the Colorado Proud camp, for how consumers have changed, what they're looking for, how to speak to them. So specifically with our public attitude survey, which we've surveyed 1,100 Colorado consumers. This was done by the ETC Institute, the Department of Ag, and Colorado State. And so these are some of the things that I found interesting. So when specifically speaking to your customers, we have here, what are the top 4 methods you use to get information about Colorado food and agriculture? We can see here that product labels is at the top of the list. This would indicate that potentially having good packaging, really getting your information across to your consumer as they see your product in your packaging would be a great way to convey how to speak to your potential customers. And then, of course, like Dawn and Tara mentioned, word of mouth is the second, and then online search. So you can see that there's a lot of importance at being at events, getting in front of your consumers and potential consumers, and then also having a digital presence, which Tara had mentioned, that's one of the more affordable routes to go to be able to grow your customer base and really keep a pulse on what's going on, what people are looking for, and then just interacting with your consumers and customers. Because I mean, when you interact with them on social media and other digital platforms, they get value from it. And then it's just an easy way to spread word of mouth and have folks reshare. So I liked this question, and I thought the information was really important. Where do your customers shop? So this was, another great question that gave us some good feedback. Obviously, still a lot of people are shopping at supermarkets. And I also think that has a little bit to do with online shopping as far as using Instacart and other delivery services that, like, King Soopers has their own delivery service now. So we see that consumers are still shopping at major retailers. And then we see that restaurants are a popular place. Also, obviously, farmers market, which I think is important to be able to be there, talk to consumers. I think that's a great way to get new customers. And then why are your consumers buying your products? I like this because I think it's important, obviously, the Colorado Proud program, to be able to have that designation on your product. It's really interesting. And I don't think it's very shocking that a lot of people want to be able to support their local economies. So just by being who you are, a local business, you're providing something that folks are very interested in purchasing and being a part of your story. And so we think it's important to showcase this, because being able to call out where you're from is, I feel like, or what you're doing, where you're from, the practices you're using, are one of the easiest ways to be able to differentiate yourself and separate yourself from, like Dawn mentioned earlier, the Frito-Lays of the world and all the major brands. People are looking for something different and unique. And specifically, they really like things that are made right here in Colorado, which is important if you're selling here. And I think that was my last slide, actually. So I think with that, I'll stop sharing and just mention that I believe partnerships are really important. You cannot wear all the hats in your operation. And I think that if you can find a way to maybe have someone help you with some of your marketing plan, or executing it, I think that's really important. If you can't do that, I think there's a lot of research to be effective with the time you have and the budget you have. And so being able to utilize some of the research we have, reach out to us. I think that's another really important part. But jumping back to partnerships, at farmers markets, what other companies complement what you do? What other organizations are, willing to support you? Are you a member of those organizations? And so being able to efficiently utilize your resources and time, I think, is really important, especially if you don't have the budget to support being able to hire, someone dedicated to just doing that for you. And I think at the department, we do a lot of that for you as well. So, specifically calling out our international and national team, John and Ashley. They are such a great team that are able to take you to these really great shows where you can be picked up by small to medium distributors. And sometimes there are grant funds. Sometimes those trips are able to be paid for. I think being a part of making sure you're visible online with our digital advertising, specifically for Colorado Proud, is just another easy way to get noticed and have people make it to your page. And so I guess with all that, it's just important to be a part of the organizations that best support what you're trying to do. And don't be afraid to reach out and see what opportunities there are, because we all need to get a start. And, sometimes the budget isn't there. But let me put in the chat the public attitude survey link. If anyone has any questions, I am ready for them. And I don't know if I missed any.
Carolyn did ask if, these services are just for producers. She's not making anything yet.
Sure. I think once you kind of start selling a product, or even, maybe moving from cottage foods out of that, even if you're a cottage foods producer, you can be a Colorado Proud member. A lot of our marketing and technical assistance grant money did go to, cottage food producers. And so it helped them kind of start to make that jump. You can always sign up for the Colorado Proud newsletter. That's free, and we only send it out once a month. We don't use your email for anything else. And so if there's any opportunities there that you think would maybe help you get a jump start on what you're looking to do, that's a great way to do it too. And maybe we can just help put you in touch with the right people. So yeah, I would say there's benefit there to sign up for at least the newsletter. And then once you get ready to start your business or you've got things selling and whatnot, definitely become a member.
That was excellent. Does anybody else have any questions for Danielle? Certainly she could be reached at the Department of Agriculture if you do have questions. So if you need to reach her. Well, great. That was fantastic. Everybody did such a good job. So much great information was shared. Yeah, really good job to all of you. Just a reminder, as Danielle did point out, business webinars, our next webinar is July 17th, and it will be focused on connecting resources. So maybe your business is at a point where you're growing, but you're not quite big enough to buy a place. Maybe you need to rent some kitchen space. So we'll have some great experts there to talk about resources that are here in Colorado that people can start growing with. And Danielle also mentioned Cultivation Station. We have podcasts twice a month. Our next podcast will be released on June 27th, and it's going to focus on agritourism as an opportunity for Colorado Proud members. Very interesting topic. So hopefully you can listen in on that. And certainly if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We are happy to connect you to, of course, Dawn or Tara, Danielle. And thank you so much for joining.